Welcome back to the deep dive. We're the show that takes these incredibly tangled stacks of information, the affidavits, the secret recordings, the internal memos, and we boil them all down to the insights that actually matter to you. And today we are not getting into academic theory or some distant policy debate. We are looking directly into a spectacular real-time legal implosion.
It's really something.
Just imagine a standard personal injury case, a slip and fall, that suddenly just explodes. It turns into this internal crisis with alleged fraud, investigative reporters, and, well, video evidence.
And that's the key, the video. Our mission today is to walk you through the critical sequence of events, all revealed in this one highly sensitive document. We're essentially pulling back the curtain on the final desperate hours inside a law firm right before they realize their whole world is about to collapse on live TV.
So what is this source material we're working with?
It's an affidavit submitted by an investigator named Harry Reimer from a company called Power Investigations. And it was filed in the case South v. 71175 ET, 231st Street, LLC et al.
Okay, an investigator's affidavit. What makes this one so special?
Well, this affidavit authenticates an audio recording from July 26, 2024. And this recording was made by a confidential informant, a former employee who's talking with a longtime paralegal at the firm, a man named Brent Schimmel.
So we get to be a fly on the wall.
Exactly. It's a raw, real-time account of how fast and how violently things fall apart when the proof of the fraud just surfaces.
Okay, so let's start at the very beginning of this whole mess. The irony here is just it's so thick, the whole crisis kicked off with a really clumsy kind of standard legal move that ended up tying the main fraudster directly to the law firm.
That's the critical mistake. It's what the whole conversation keeps coming back to. The firm's boss, Alex, he needed an affidavit for something, and he told his staff, do an affidavit for Wilson, that he's a former client who does investigative work for us.
So he put it in writing.
He put it in writing. The paralegal notes that by having this guy, Wilson, sign that document, Alex officially ties Wilson to the firm. So he's not just a client anymore. Suddenly, he's an in-house investigator.
Which means his actions reflect on the firm's practices.
Directly. And almost immediately, the defense attorney, the lawyer for the property owners, he doesn't send some vague warning letter.
Yeah.
He goes straight for the jugular.
What does that tell you? I mean, that kind of direct personal attack.
It tells you they weren't guessing. They knew. The paralegal, Schimmel, he recounted that the defense lawyer just skipped all the formalities, called Alex directly, and said, and this is a quote, "I'm getting your client arrested."
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
that is not a threat. That's a statement of fact. It's based on solid evidence. And according to Schimmel, that immediately told him two things. One, they had certain knowledge. And two,
They had video.
they had video, no question.
So you'd think, okay, a warning that's severe, an explicit threat of arrest, that's got to trigger some immediate damage control, right?
You would think. But the conversation makes it clear that Alex and the other partner, Shaw, they ignored the most sensible advice they were getting.
What was the advice?
The paralegal, Schimmel, he said he immediately told them, drop this simming case, because the other side clearly has video. He even says he told them to drop it 3 different times.
And they just didn't listen. Why?
Hubris. Schimmel chalks it up to their certainty that they were just smarter than everyone else, that they could outmaneuver the whole thing. And that arrogance, well, it sealed their fate.
And the pressure just kept mounting. The defense wasn't done. They escalated the threat beyond just an arrest. This is where it gets federal.
This is where it gets really tactical, yeah.
Yeah.
So next, the defense attorney serves a demand for any bills or info the plaintiff submitted to Medicaid.
Ah.
And that set off a massive internal alarm. I mean, for your listeners who might not be familiar with this move isn't about the injury claim anymore. It's about looking for proof that the firm submitted fraudulent claims to a government program.
So why is demanding Medicaid info such a clear setup?
Because it completely changes the game. You defraud a private company, that's one thing. You defraud Medicaid, which is taxpayer money, state and federal. Now you've got the attention of the FBI, state agencies. Shaw, one of the partners, saw it right away. He said he's going to get him on Medicaid fraud. And that finally prompted this new urgency to drop the case. But it was already too late.
Yeah.
So the walls are closing in, You've got the arrest threat, the Medicaid trap. But the real smoking gun, the thing that kicked off the public collapse, it didn't even come from the other lawyers. It came from the media.
From a reporter.
An email just lands in their inbox. It's from Kristen Thorne, an investigative reporter at Channel 7 News. And in the email, there's a picture.
What's the picture of?
It shows Wilson and a friend taking measurements of this hole 5 hours before the alleged accident. The reporter isn't just fishing here. She has proof of pre-planning, if not outright staging.
Okay, so that's it. That's proof of staging, handed right to the media. The clock is officially ticking. What's the firm's immediate move?
They try to pull the plug. Fast. They file an order to show cause and a stip to discount. Now, for those of you not in the legal world, a stipulation of discontinuance is basically a mutual agreement to just end a case, quietly.
And the order to show cause.
That's the emergency button. It's a motion demanding a hearing right now because something urgent is happening. In this case, their need to get off the case immediately.
But the defense attorney refused to sign it, right? He wouldn't let them just walk away.
Not a chance. He flat out refused. He said, this is fraud and I want this going forward. He knew he had them and he wanted this whole thing exposed in court and, in the court of public opinion.
And that refusal just pushed the defense to drop the final bomb on the judge?
The ultimate piece of evidence, Schimmel details it in the conversation. It was bad enough they had video of the measuring, but the defense had something so much worse.
What was it?
They sent another letter to the judge. And this one said, look, we don't just have video of him measuring the hole. We have video of him making the hole.
Making it. Oh, that changes everything. That's not just a messy civil claim anymore. That's premeditated.
Criminal. It's criminal tampering with evidence, absolutely. And they knew the proof was solid. Schimmel confirms a critical detail. He says, while the reporter's email had Wilson's face blacked out, for legal reasons.
Right.
The defense attorney's copy of the video, it clearly caught Wilson's face, his friend's face, everything. The camera was, and I quote, right there behind watching him the whole time. They knew the evidence was completely and utterly damning. So this brings us right to the point of no return. Judicial intervention. I mean, once a judge gets a letter saying a plaintiff was filmed literally making the hole.
The judge has to act.
Immediately. And he did. He sends an email demanding an urgent meeting in chambers.
Yeah.
August 25th at 12 o'clock. And as Schimmel says in the recording, lunchtime in a judge's chambers, that ain't good.
No, that is not a good sign. So what happens? Does the firm realize they can't just quietly discontinue the case anymore?
Oh, yeah. The meeting gets canceled, but the judge refuses to accept their stipulation. He essentially tells them, this case is not over. And then he orders them to formally file a motion to be relieved as counsel.
Meaning they have to go on the public record explaining why they're leaving the case.
Exactly. And he tells the other side to formally oppose it with all their facts. The judge was making sure this alleged fraud was fully documented for, disciplinary boards and prosecutors.
And the second the system demanded that level of formality,
right,
the firm just imploded.
Total chaos. The professional cowardice is it's stunning. Alex, the boss, he tries to force this young, newly licensed lawyer, a poor kid right out of school, to go to a video deposition for Wilson and basically lie. Say Wilson wasn't there, they don't know where he is.
He was willing to sacrifice a young lawyer's career.
His entire career and license, just to avoid taking responsibility himself. Schimmel was outraged. He was like, why are you dragging this kid into it? This kid has a license to protect. It's a perfect example of leadership just sacrificing the most vulnerable person to cover their own tracks.
And that abdication of responsibility continued, right? Even with writing that crucial motion to get off the case.
It did. That motion had to be written so carefully because it was going to be the public record of their involvement. At first, Shaw, the other partner, says he'll delegate and write it. Then the next morning, he backs out, says, you know what, you do it, I don't want to touch it.
Unbelievable.
He literally says, this is something Alex should do personally. So in the end, Schimmel, the paralegal, is the one forced to write it. A complete failure of leadership.
And all this is happening while the media clock is ticking down.
Right. Channel 7 News calls for a last chance for comment. They confirm the story is running Tuesday night between 5 and 8 p.m. The crisis is about to go very, very public.
And the damage wasn't just this one case, was it? The fallout was already spreading.
It was a contagion. The conversation details that the defense lawyers were already talking. They were questioning every single case we've had, especially the trip and falls. They were sending preservation letters, demanding documents on cases from years ago. The firm's reputation was just gone overnight.
Yeah.
And if you connect all these dots, Schimmel makes it really clear this wasn't just one bad case. This was systemic. He compares Alex's entire operation to a New York Post article about someone named Subin, calling it a blueprint for how Alex ran his cases.
A Subin blueprint. That sounds like a formula for, what, industrialized fraud? What were the mechanics?
It's a very specific pattern. Step 1, you get an immigrant to stage an accident. Step 2, you make them take out high-interest loans against the settlement. That locks them in.
So they can't back out.
Exactly. Then, step 3, You force them to get expensive medical procedures, specifically fusions.
Wait, why fusions? Why not just surgeries?
That's the nuance of this scheme. Fusions are these incredibly expensive procedures that insurance will pay for, but they're often medically questionable in these scenarios. They generate huge bills, which drives up the settlement value. It's a high-return medical billing target.
So the last step is you settle the case, but because of all the loans and the insane medical fees, the client walks away with almost nothing.
Precisely. The loans eat up the settlement. The client is silenced because they got some money, but the firm and its partners make a fortune. Schimmel is explicit. This blueprint is how Alex learned how to run a case. It's an organized, repeatable scheme.
Looking back, there was this tiny window before the reporter's email for some kind of low-tech damage control. What did Schimmel suggest they do?
He suggested Alex should have immediately taken like $8,000 or $10,000, given it to Wilson, and told him to just disappear. Go to Florida, go to the Dominican Republic for a few months.
Get the plaintiff out of the picture.
Yeah, remove him from the jurisdiction, maybe derail the whole thing. But Schimmel says Alex was either too cheap or he just didn't believe the threat was real. So he did nothing.
So now, with media exposure and federal charges on the table, the question becomes who's going to flip first? Alex, the boss, or Wilson, the guy on the ground?
And that's a critical legal question.
Yeah.
You might think Alex is the main target, but Schimmel argues Wilson is actually way more valuable to the authorities.
Why is that?
Because Wilson can give up Alex and all the cases and get immunity. Wilson, who staged the accidents, holds the keys to dismantling the entire operation, the blueprint, all the other cases.
So Wilson, the smaller piece, can trade up and take down the entire firm, while Alex can only really give up Wilson.
Exactly. The authorities want the biggest fish, and Wilson's testimony is the net they can use to catch him.
So what was Schimmel's final prediction for what happens when this story airs?
It was grim, but realistic. He says when the report airs, Medicaid, the insurance companies, the FBI, everybody's going to see it. He predicts Alex will be immediately tied to that whole New York Post article, that Subin model, and the investigation will just explode far beyond this one little slip and fall.
So the key takeaway from this whole thing is just the shocking simplicity of the evidence, right? A video of a guy making a hole 5 hours before he falls in it. And then the absolute catastrophic failure of the firm's leadership to grasp how serious that was until it was on the evening news.
And for you, the listener, the lesson here is really about the pressure that information creates. When you're faced with that kind of evidence, all the professional ethics just melt away. The advice the paralegal gives the former employee, the informant, it's pure self-preservation.
What was the advice?
He told him, get your resume up to date, and if anyone asks you anything, play stupid.
That's not legal advice. That's survival training. It's the sound of an entire professional world collapsing, and the only thing left to do is run and deny everything.
It's that moment when the legal crisis becomes a personal one, when finding a new job is way more important than filing one last motion.
Which brings us to our final provocative thought for you to consider. This entire crisis, we're talking possible felonies, federal agencies, media exposure. It all started with one seemingly tiny administrative decision. Alex made Wilson sign an affidavit tying him to the firm as an investigator.
A single piece of paper.
So the question is, how often does a single seemingly minor document, something created just for convenience, become the critical piece of evidence that unravels an entire sophisticated criminal operation?
Something to think about. We'll see you on the next Deep Dive.